Hi, this is John with VectDecks. In this tutorial, I'm going to go over a very powerful and useful feature that is built into Vectorworks, and that's called Design Layer Viewports. In particular, it's making use of their external resource capability. I'm going to show you this rather than explain. It'll be a lot easier. I created a document here with this house, and I used a VectDecks Architect workspace. If you have fundamentals or designer or landmark, you could do the same in those particular workspaces. I made this house as complete as possible, so you'll have a good example of how it's best to use that design layer viewports to minimize the amount of information that's in one document. See, this particular document has all their own symbols and classes and textures and layers. And if I draw, and you're very capable of doing this, producing the VectDecks deck in this document is just going to add to the overload that's already in here. So I'm going to show you this house first real quick. It's complete. I wanted to make it as complete as possible. Now you may have a lot more landscaping. I just put these image props in here. And what we're going to do is just work on the back face of this home because that's where obviously the deck's going to be. So let's go ahead and let's get back to wireframe. I'm going to go to top plan view, and I'm going to make the floor level the active layer to work on. Now, prior to this, I also created a sketch of a typical deck design that maybe a customer would want. Just a simple sketch to get an idea of the size. And then in this particular layer, what I'll do is instead of using the tools to draw the deck, I'm just going to create a simple floor plan of the deck, and I'm going to use Vectorworks 2D tools to do this. Now that particular design that I sketched out is going to be 20 feet out from the home in this area. And then in this one corner, it's going to be 10 feet out. Now I have the basics. I'm going to add these together. The basics of the floor plan for the sun deck. Let me clip this area out here where this bump out is. So I'm just using Vectorworks 2D tools to produce this. Clip. Okay, now I have the basic floor plan. Now what we're going to do is cut this out of this drawing, and then I'm going to create a new document. I'm going to use VectDecks template for this. I'm going to go ahead and paste. I'm going to paste this in place. That'll give me a good idea where this will be in the target document. Now I have the basic floor plan, and I'm going to go ahead and finish this up still while having a 2D object here. I'm going to finish this a little bit more to the sketch I made. These corners are softened. All right, that's the floor plan with those chamfered edges. Now I'm going to go ahead and select it, and we're going to work on VectDecks tool sets. I'm first going to convert this to a frame. Now I'm going to go through this process very quickly right now. It's just to emphasize the tutorial with the design layer viewports, but I always like drawing this out because it just kind of shows people how quickly and easy it is to produce a sun deck with VectDecks. Let's make this beam go all the way through. Move it back 16 inches. All right, that's the deck with the beam. Now let's pop in these steps on this side. That step coming off this side. Move it farther back, about 12 inches. And then I have a set of steps off of this side. Now this step was 60 inches off that back edge, so I'm going to just drag this and move it 60 inches. Now the sketch showed the elevation of this deck, 101 inches at this point right here where the step lands, and then over here to be 70 inches. So what I'm going to do here is set the elevation of the deck to that 101 inch, 101.5 inches actually. And you'll see the steps will extend to adjust to that elevation. It also shows this particular step to turn to a landing, so let's go ahead and set that up right now while I'm in here. And that's a step to a landing. It's gonna be off to the right side, that's fine. And let's adjust the steps to more equal distribution. It also on my specs shows mathematically for that to work, to be that 100.5 inches, is we need to have that step rise to be 7 1/4. So let's apply that right now. All right, that's done on that side. Now this side's going to be a little different. It needs to be that 70 inches, and we're going to adjust that later. I'm going to first finish the drawing, and I'll show you what we'll do just before we save it. The next thing we need to do though is insert those rails. So I'm going to select VectDecks Rail Tool, and we must click and create this clockwise. That way the placement of the rails is on that inside frame of the sun deck. There we go. Some of these points are so hard to see. I'm glad they have that loop lock feature where you hit the Z key and it'll zoom right in there quickly. Now we have the rails. Let's convert this to 3D and see what we have so far. Select the frame and click Draw 3. That way it draws all the components, the rails, the beams, the steps, everything in 3D. We have everything here, but as I mentioned before, this needs to be 70 inches. So we need to adjust it, but because we have Use Deck Info Collect, it wants to lock into the 101.5. So we have to turn this off and manually set this to 70. And on my specs shows mathematically for it to work out to grade at 70 inches, we need to have that step size or the step riser set to 7 inches. So let's go ahead and do that right now. Apply that change. Okay, there we go. Now we're going to save this, and previously saved one, and this is a source file. So we saved it as that source file, and now we're going to go ahead and go back to the target and create that design layer viewport. What we need to do here is just go into the file menu and select create viewport. I'm going to leave that name viewport 1 by default. Now you can create your own design layer, or you can insert this into any of the existing layers that you already have. I created one called Sun Deck. Now I'm going to click on the source that we need to get that from. It's an external source. I'm going to choose, and there's that source file. Leave everything at the default for now. It'll pop it right in there. I'm going to turn on all the layers so we can see it all, how it lines up. Now let's see how this looks in an isometric kind of view. There it is. Let me render it OpenGL. It was that easy. Now we have the sun deck in here, right where we want it. And we don't have all the textures and classes and all that layers that come with the sun deck. It stays on that source file. It makes it really really a lot easier when you're designing, so you can design your deck and design the home and then use it as a source. Now you still can go back and make changes to this sun deck and then just update it here in the target file. let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to go back to the source, and I'm going to make some changes here. I need to first turn this back on so the changes that I make on the frame are going to apply to everything on the deck. So it'll extend it. We'll fix that again later. But what I'll do here is I'm going to go to the decking, and I'm going to change that surface from that treated look to a teak finish. And on the beams, I'm going to finish those beams out too. Just trim them out and give them a white finish. Okay, white, and click OK. So now everything will be changed so that the beam will have this new wrap trim finish to it. And while I'm in here, let's go ahead and change the rails too. Give it a real fancy finish. I'm going to go in here and use the deck objects, and let's change this to a real fancy finish. And let's make them all white. And as far as the post rail objects, let's go ahead and make those changes too. You're just selecting a different type of symbols. And all of this will reside on the deck document. It doesn't have to reside on your other document. I'm going to have a center panel inserted here too. We'll click OK. Now let's select this rail and assign which span or which opening is going to actually get that particular finish to it. I'm going to select the rail itself, and then I think I'd like to put it on these corners. So we're going to do it on 2 and 4, and on 9 and 11, and let's put one here on 13 too. Okay. Now that will redraw and center those panels there. Now the only other thing we need to do now is go back and turn that use deck info off here and reset this to that 70 inches. So we're going to manually set this to 70. Now we're ready to go ahead and do a save again. Those changes won't change on the target file until you physically do a save. Now let's go back to the target file, and nothing changes until we actually do an update. So in the navigation palette here, when you select on those viewports, I right click and select update, and you'll see that the deck that we changed on that source file will be updated here on the target file. So this really is the best way to utilize VectDecks tool sets. If you have a complicated document with a lot of information, it's best to use that design layer viewports with that external resource file capability to draw your designs. I'm going to go ahead and render this in final quality RenderWorks and see how this all looks.